You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of MedTech Growth Levers. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb. Joined live with me is my co-host, Oret Davis. Oret, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. Really excited for today.
Same here. It's a really good topic. I got your framework pulled up. We're going to walk through it, which is improving show-up rates for sales meetings and conversions. For those who are listening to the recording, if you want to join our weekly Zoom call, it's free and it's open to all MedTech growth, commercial, and sales leaders. Just check the link below in the show notes and register there. And we'll see you in the next call. So that being said, all right, why don't we introduce the topic before we jump to the framework? I think the most important way to put it is that every deal starts with an initial call, no matter what. And the thing that we often forget is that there's a lot of money and resources poured into the initial marketing of getting the attention, et cetera, right, and getting the lead. But once the meeting is booked, a lot of times people take the foot off the gas and say, oh, like this person booked a meeting. And then they end up with reschedules, no-shows, et cetera. And now a deal that might have taken, let's say, 7 to 9 months to close within a normal cycle can take a year and a half, et cetera. And things that should be done within a period of a week or two end up taking months. So I think this is such an important topic. So I'll let you introduce it from there. And then when you're ready, let me know and I'll share screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we see a lot of companies they face is in this overall booking, demo, meeting flow and with their sales pipeline, right? As Omar said, we spend a lot of time, effort, and resources on the front end acquiring those leads. I'm sure all of us have our marks for cost per lead and cost per qualified opportunity, some of these metrics. But I think one factor that really plays very heavily into those numbers is your meeting show up rate. So if you have a 50% meeting show up rate, your qualified leads is actually doubled, if not more. But if you're able to solve for that factor, you can significantly lower that cost. And so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to break down, we're going to go over a couple of different funnels, the old funnel that most companies run, the traditional approach. And then we're going to dive in and show like a new funnel or like a new way to kind of think of your overall marketing funnel, the sales process on the back end, and how you can potentially increase your show up rate or kind of give yourselves the best chances for people to show up and for them to be excited and want to show up to your meetings. So this is the breakdown that we have here. I'm going to walk through a couple of best practices as well too, in terms of standard procedures, how frequently, for example, you should be following up with someone. What's that cadence, what you should include in those messages, and go from there and just open it up to see what other people are doing, what your experience has been. The one caveat that I'll make through all of this is every company should be experimenting with and testing with. This is not meant to be hard, fast rule. This is the absolute approach. Everyone has to do this. This is some guidelines. These are some things that we've tried with clients that seem to work well. And so my challenge to everyone here is to test this. Maybe things need to be rearranged or flipped or moved around or extended. But hopefully this is a little bit of a basic intro framework for everyone here.
Awesome. So let me jump into it.
Long-winded intro to that, but hopefully that
not at all,
lays
man.
Down some of the framework of what we're trying to
totally
go through here in this one.
And let me share a screen there on Zoom.
Yeah, perfect.
And then let's.
Yeah. So breaking this down. So what I have on screen is I tried to mock up what is generally the traditional marketing funnel, sales funnel that a lot of companies have, right? And you have your traffic sources, whether they're organic or paid. They're all going into for most companies, a homepage, but ideally you would do a landing page. And from there, there's some type of opt-in, some type of demo request form gets submitted. And then starts this process for a lot of companies. It's just the bad way to do it, of this manual follow-up, manually emailing, hey, when can we meet? Manual text, if some companies are a little bit more forward-thinking. And begins this cycle of, hey, are you available to chat? Are you available to chat? Or available to chat? And eventually finally get someone to book a meeting. Right? It can be incredibly manual, tedious process. Tends to waste a lot of the sales team's time, a lot of the effort as well too into this. And it doesn't always lead to the best outcome, right? A lot of this can be automated. And I think there's a better way overall of how to do this process right here. But this is what I think 90% of companies run. Just give me a quick thumbs up if you run something similar in your organizations or have witnessed something similar, whether you're signing up for a demo process where you submit a form, you immediately have to follow up with someone to like book the time on the calendar, right? So overall, very inefficient process and leaves a lot to be desired when you're thinking about the traditional marketing sales funnel booking demo approach. Omar, what do you have to say about some of this stuff right here?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because I think the most important thing that people have to keep in mind is that prior to the big sale, which is the sale of, let's say, your product, whatever it might be, you're selling time, right? And so the idea is that once somebody has engaged with your company, you're trying to sell them on the idea of spending time with a representative from our company will be a good use of your time. And so you have to sell value. If the only value you have is self-centered around, hey, I need to get this meeting, when can you meet? When can you meet me? Yep. What you've destroyed, which is hard to replicate, is that the prospect submitted a form, whether it's like a white paper or demo, whatever it is, they had a pain that was being hit that they said, okay, I want to learn more about this company. That pain can very quickly be overshadowed by the annoyance that your salesperson causes, not to their fault, but to the fact that they're just trying to get a meeting booked, etc. And that process is a product. And if that process/product is a bad experience, that might be your only time where you can get that physician onto a call. And a lot of times that missed opportunity can only be saved in the future with sometimes a completely different salesperson. Because now, like, that prospect, whenever they see that salesperson's name in their inbox, they're like, oh, like, it's this same person again, just bothering and pestering me. And I would say this is even the same for me in my process. Yeah, I have a podcast, I have all this stuff, but when I do follow up with a CEO or VP of marketing or chief commercial officer, I have to be good at making that process, even just reading my emails, somewhat educational, entertaining, value added, so that it provides momentum going into that meeting where they say, hey, this time that I'm going to spend with this person is going to be time well spent, versus, hey, I think anytime we have the whole, hey, just circling back, just following up.
You've already lost.
And you're reducing the experience. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm a huge fan of providing value in these communications, and we'll talk about that on some of the other slides or sections here.
Yeah,
even on the landing page opt-in flow, I'm sure we've all seen companies where you submit the demo form and it just says, thank you for your submission. And that's it.
That's a missed opportunity.
Or even on the opt-in page itself, right? And a lot of companies don't even do this. They miss out on this opportunity to really tell and get someone excited about what's in the demo and what's in it for them. Set expectations. Hey, this is a 15 or 30-minute demo. In it, we're not only going to show you the product, we're going to give you some best practices around what other people in the industry are using this device or this tool or this category and how it's impacting their approach to business, to medicine, and what have you. I think a lot of companies just have this request a demo page. It's just a form and nothing else. And there's a lot that can be done there.
So you want to scroll down?
Yeah, so I think we've done a pretty good job of identifying like the old way, the traditional funnel approach that most companies are running. And so now I want to now break down what I think is like a better approach to this. What I think is probably at some points even like a minimum that companies should be thinking about how to structure their marketing funnel, their follow-up and re-engagement funnel, and how this looks overall, right? A little bit more expanded than what we saw before, but that's for very good reason, right? Same, we're still getting some traffic in. It's now going to a landing page. We still have the same opt-in page. One of the changes that I'm a big fan of making here at this point, though, is in that opt-in page, is instead of just doing your normal form where you have your 10 plus questions where you're asking everything from their social number to their bank account, is to take the approach of making this a multi-step or a quiz or a survey type form, where it eases the perceived burden of filling out the form because we've split it up into multiple pieces, right? We can show like a progress bar and some things like that. And we can even do things like a partial a form completion. So if someone doesn't complete the full form, we don't lose out on any of that information. We don't lose out on that lead or information. But I think this does a little bit better process. And with this multi-step approach, like we can still get all those questions in and use it to qualify, disqualify, route, filter prospects that are coming in, right? Without making it seem like a burden or challenging, right? So that's the first little tweak there. So instead of just demo form with 50 different questions, it's multi-step quiz survey type form where it presents itself a little bit better. So that's the first change there. The next piece here, or Omar, do you have anything to add on this piece here?
No, I think the one thing I do want to add is just I completely agree with you about making, again, this is all about, I think a lot of marketers will benefit thinking about user experience. Just the experience of submitting a form should be enjoyable. And psychologically, from a behavior standpoint, human beings, when you see a progress bar, there's a temptation to finish it. And so if you'll notice on, I would say, more sophisticated marketing websites, you'll be filling out a form and the progress bar shows 50% done, but it keeps pushing you to do more. And that's because like subconsciously, like we have this thing where you just want to complete that task. So I think that process is really important. And again, I always say that before you add friction, you should be asking yourself like, all right, if we're going to get this information, is this of value, right? So a perfect example is sometimes I see people asking for an MPI number. Most physicians know their MPI number, but is that necessary? Probably not. Or asking for a company name. Okay, they have different practices, they have different hospitals. So like things like that, things that if you can look that up for the lead, you don't necessarily need it. So that's my own thing, but only thing that I would comment on.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Definitely like user experience is critical and key. And then think about sales marketing perspective. What does your sales team really need to know ahead of time to help route a deal, right?
Now,
And it could be simplified. It doesn't need to be all the fields. Identify what's absolutely like mission critical. And sometimes it's a fight to minimize those form fields. And I've had this fight before where it's an uphill challenge because the CEO wants it, the sales team wants it, some investor or board member months down the line for their reporting or whatever it may be, but it can detract from the conversion process and detract away from the overall user experience.
By the way, I have to just point something out because I think it's funny. Over on LinkedIn, Shomit, who's a MedTech CEO, is watching this from his flight in air. I love it.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's jump to something that I think is really interesting and important, which is, I know the answer, but I want you to explain on it. Orette, we already captured the lead. Why do we want to retarget these people with ads on social media?
Ooh, such a good question. So you've already captured the lead. Doesn't mean you've necessarily closed the sale. That's the first reason, right? So by doing this remarketing process here, we now know and we can start to guess where they are in terms of our overall buyer's journey and in the marketing funnel, right? They may have moved from top of funnel to now middle of funnel or bottom of funnel. We can now show them different assets because they've already taken one step. We can now show them case studies. We can show them testimonials. So that's the first reason why at this point you want to do some type of remarketing towards these individuals, right? The deal is not done until it's done. The other piece is here is a good opportunity for using lookalike audiences, for example, right? If you have your target audience and they are submitting this form, you can then hopefully try and find more people like them that are likely to take the same action using various lookalike audiences on Facebook or LinkedIn or other channels to then go and have these platforms find people similar to them to do the same things, right? And starts this whole feedback loop over again. So I always make the recommendation, regardless of where what stage your company's at, whether you're looking to run ads today or in 6 months, to have the infrastructure in place. So the remarketing pixels, the LinkedIn insight tags and things like that, to have that on your website, to have that on these high intent pages. So that way, when you do decide to run campaigns, you have some information there. You can create some different audiences. You can do some other items as well too there.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people have to keep in mind is that part of sales is generating a lot of momentum, right? It's part of the reason why when I started a podcast, this idea is that people get to know me personally first before even meeting me. And I think that you do a good job with your marketing if somebody gets on a call and they're like, I feel like I already know you. And so I think this process of until there's ink on paper, persuasion has to be deployed all the time. Because in the event, like, for example, if they submit the form, they don't book the time, or they book the time, they have to reschedule. A lot of times they forget. And so you have to find multiple ways to stay in front of that person. So what I would say is, instead of having your salesperson do that manual follow-up, like, hey, circling back, following up with everything, let that be your ads, because that's the thing that stays in front of that person. And you can use social proof in those ads, authority bias, all kinds of things to motivate that person to be like, oh yeah, like I remember that I wanted to book time with that company and let me do it.
Yeah, you just have to stay present and top of mind. And I think like perception is reality. So if a prospects begin to see you everywhere and every time they're on Instagram or Facebook or on LinkedIn, something about your company is popping up and you're continuing to educate them and build awareness for the problems, the challenges, I think that does a pretty big lift for when the sales moment happens. Like the momentum is built up, and hopefully those sales motions can happen a lot sooner and faster.
Totally.
Yeah, so I guess we're moving on here.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're in the pick your own adventure. So is there anything else for us to cover, or let's go down this? We want to go down the meeting not booked, because I'm sure that's what people probably.
Yeah, we'll go down the route. But the point there with the multi-step, though, is that helps to route. So first of all, I know a lot of companies have concerns about exposing their calendars to leads into prospects, right? And the whole point of the demo form, the multi-step forms, quiz surveys is so you can get better routing to filter out those people and then prioritize and tier them. Someone submits your opt-in form, they could get presented with your calendar, right? And if they do not book the meeting, what happens, right? And this is where having a really good cadence comes into place, where you want to have these follow-ups and touch points, whether it's the welcome engagement email, additional follow-ups, and then same thing with the SMS. Hey, introducing yourself. Hey, my name is Orette. I'm with Thermosensor. I saw that you started the demo process. Do you have any questions? I'm here to help you, or here to help guide you through the process. And so using this as a point to make that initial introduction towards the prospect, so that they know they can point a name to a face to a person and not just like the entity that is the company. So I think that's a critical point of this piece right here, is if the meeting's not booked, these follow-up motions are happening. And then because now we're also doing the remarketing aspect as well too, so people that do not take the next steps, like they get enrolled into another set of marketing campaigns on the platforms to drive them further down the funnel, right? Presenting them with more case studies, more social pieces of social proof, things like that. So this, like I said, this can vary by company, by deal stage and cycle length. We generally recommend 3 or so follow-ups spaced out. I have 24 hours here. There should be immediate follow-up when someone, within an hour of someone like not taking, or even less of someone not taking the desired action, there should be a follow-up that happens there immediately. And then from there, that cadence should happen within 24, 48 hours, because that's really like the hot lead time cycle. Longer than that, we don't really see much uptick, right? So it's really within the first 48, like, is such an important thing to do.
Yeah, Ben has a comment. He says that he likes the SMS cadence after the email. Have you had any issues with opt-outs?
No real issues with opt-out that we really seen. I think if you do see an opt-out, it's probably a good intention that they're not a good fit lead or don't have an interest, and they probably just randomly filled out the form. We trying our best not to be overly aggressive or like too salesy, and actually try to be a helping hand. I think as long as you take that stance from it and not try and push the sale, I think that's where you can minimize the opt-out and actually keep people engaged in this overall funnel. I think at the end of the day, be human. A certain amount of follow-ups, and if it doesn't happen, bounce them off to a long-term nurture, your newsletter, get them re-enrolled in some other type of marketing engagement outside of what you see here until they raise their hand again. But yeah, I think that's a great question.
I was going to ask her on the SMS side, just talking about tech stack, what do you prefer to use on the SMS side? I know HubSpot, I think, rolled that feature out, but not everybody has the Marketing Pro set up for HubSpot.
Oh, man.
But I'm wondering what...
I could go on a rant on that one on the HubSpot SMS, but I'll leave that alone for right now. I like to keep a very simple stack with this early on, and I just like using Calendly for this kind of stuff. Keep it simple. For a lot of companies that are proving out these workflows and use cases, something like that works really well. If you want to go upgrade, Chili Piper is like the next tier.
Chili Piper's good.
Yeah, for these kinds of sales motions. Not every company's there or that advanced. Chili Piper is like to me, I think one of those holy grails of like, they just do this really. I think Calendly is good if you want something, want to apply it quick, get it spun up quickly, and just get it up and going. For example, one of the downsides of Calendly, for example, is there's no two-way SMS.
Right,
so you can send the reminder, but if someone responds back to you saying, hey, I can't make it, that just disappears. Like you never receive that message. So can be a pretty big downfall of using Calendly. Right?
One thing I would say, and this salespeople might like this, I would encourage if somebody comes in and they don't book a meeting, that maybe that's the prompt for the salesperson to text that person, but not, this is where, again, I like tracking everything, but not using third-party apps. Literally take your phone, and what I recommend is doing this. One is simple text saying, hi, Dr. Smith, my name is Omar Khateeb, and I'm with blah, blah, blah. So the moment that you put your name in there, if you call that person from your phone, iPhone will now put your name into the caller ID because you've stated it, right? And then from there, if I was a salesperson, because always think about it like this, if something can be automated, it can be ignored. And so when it comes to personalizing things, salesperson can take 5 seconds, literally take their iPhone, record a selfie video saying, hey, Dr. Smith, my name's Omar. I work with with this company. Really excited that you showed some interest. I'd love to chat with you. Checked out your practice. I love that you have a clinical interest in XYZ. I have some ideas about how you can use our product. Looking forward to it. Send that. They're going to watch that video, and it makes the process way more personable. I do want to give a shout out real quick to Jordan Felix, who did this actually with a purchasing director. And that was such maybe I'll bring it up here to show everybody. That was such a unique experience. That purchasing is a hospital purchasing director. Yep. They posted about it on LinkedIn.
Wow, that personalized touch.
Yeah, because it's so different.
I think I agree with you 100% here. And now I realize this now. I think this is an automated workflow. But I think what's even more important, as Omar alluded to, is like the manual touch points of this and like the personal touch of actually, like Omar said, taking out your phone, sending the text, recording that 30-second video and pushing it off to someone. I'm curious, Omar, have you seen this used on LinkedIn a lot? Or what's your experience? Or have you seen that, like the personal soundbite videos or voice messages on LinkedIn?
And I found the post, so I'll bring it up here in a second. But yeah, like what I try to, so this is just insane that this is a actual here. I'm pulling up this post real quick just because I want people to see this. This is literally the purchasing director, and this guy like literally tagged the company just to talk about this cold message. And so he received it on LinkedIn.
Yep.
I actually had this guy on my podcast. The episode released in a few weeks, but pretty much his thing was like, it was such a unique experience for him and that he loved it because it was very value adding and very personable. I think that what I recommend to people is do this process through a variety of different places. Like even my cold prospecting follow-up, I tried via text. I tried via LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, when you go to Messenger, there's a little button you click where you can record a video. It takes a second, and the most important thing is that it's differentiated. It gets attention. I can guarantee you that 100% of those videos you sent will be watched. Some people, they like using software like Vidyard, which is good because you get data. The problem though with Vidyard is that you have to click a link, it goes something. You want to make this as personal as possible. So like when you're texting with your friends, not sending you a link to a video that they made, they're literally just sending you a video. All right,
yeah,
let's go down this adventure.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes you have to do things that don't scale. And that's one of those things that it's not
totally,
it doesn't scale. It's a one-to-one thing. But I think the effort is definitely probably worth the reward a lot of times.
Absolutely. Again, like my biggest thing is if it could be automated, it could be ignored. And things that are not quote unquote scalable, right? Yeah. They're things that your competitor is probably not doing. And so the name, again, when it comes to selling and marketing, the name of the game is number one, how do you get attention? And the one way to get attention is just do things that are like remarkably different than other people. All right. So let's say they book the meeting. All right.
Yes. So on this flow,
For context, this is where it ends for most companies. Is right here. You got to thank you, and it goes into a void. By the way, I think the dumbest thing that I've seen that I think a lot of money's lost here is like somebody submits to get a demo, and it's thank you, we'll be in touch. It's like, why not just give them the calendar right there because they're ready, like they know their calendar. And now what would take like literally an extra second for the prospect to just find time. Now it turns into weeks of, the salesperson gets the notification of the lead. Then the salesperson sends the email. So now like 24, 48 hours has gone by. If it's on a Friday, it's 3 full days. And now it's this back and forth of, like what day works? Is this or that? Just give them calendar. Yeah, sorry. That's just like,
Tuesdays
totally.
and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. work for me.
By the way, real quick, can I just comment tactic on that? Mistake a lot of salespeople make when it comes to following up and getting time book is asking, are you free next week? Because that's a yes or no question. The right question to say is to give them either options or to say, what day are you free next week? Because then they have to give a day. And if they can't give a day, they'll say, I'm not free next week, but what about this day? So never ask yes or no questions. That's I think, a good rule of thumb for sales. But sorry, keep going.
No, I agree. I agree with that. So that's actually a good little tidbit on the follow-up process there. All right, so now where are we? So we're on this choose your adventure branching arc here. I'm going to start from, we're at the calendar. Someone has now booked the meeting and we present them with a thank you page. I think there's an opportunity here, or there is an opportunity here to present them with a video of what to expect from the meeting and like the guidelines as well too. Hey, show up. It's going to be nice if you have access to your computer. You're in a quiet place. You're not in your car. Laid some groundwork and some expectations, right? Because the worst thing is for any of us to have a meeting schedule and the other person is in a place where they can be easily distracted. You might as well cancel the meeting in that situation. So sometimes it's just helpful just to tell people up front, these are the expectations I have for the meeting. And this is what I expect from you from the meeting. And to do that in a format kind of outlines that gets them excited to do the meeting, but lay some ground rules as well too, right? Book the meeting. There's some type of thank you message that goes out. I think from there now we can start the next piece of this follow-up sequence. And so this is something that is pretty different than a lot of companies are doing out there and that a lot of companies that I've seen, right? Because most will do this sequence and it's the generic, hey, reminder, you have a meeting with me next Wednesday. Here's the text. We have a meeting with me next Wednesday. What I'm proposing here in this flow is different, right? There's the confirmation email, like the welcome, who I am, same thing with the SMS. But then from there, leading up to the meeting, 24 hours before, an hour before, 15 minutes before, you choose the cadence here, is you use those emails as a chance to build up anticipation, to lay out the use case of why someone should take this meeting or why they need to take this meeting. And so that is layering on case studies and social proof in those welcome emails, doing some mini FAQs and objections that commonly get handled. Using this, that way, by the time the meeting comes around, you can have more productive, insightful meetings and not address questions that could have been answered by someone just seeing your website or some of these other items. But I think part of the goal of this cadence here, like I said, is to get people excited about the product, for them to see more and more studies or proof points or case studies or social proof, whatever you want to call it, of people using the product. And that way you can have a much more productive meeting when it does time to have the meeting comes up.
Totally. And I think the one thing that I would recommend, because obviously some of these things will take a little bit of time for companies to build out. Many of you, even at a startup level, have these assets already. It's just a matter of putting these assets into emails, right? But the one thing that I would say is that I think a lot of people, they use the HubSpot scheduler or even Calendly. The one thing that I see as a huge miss is using the appropriate automated like reminders. So a lot of times people have it where it just reminds somebody once the day before. Really take advantage of those notifications so that it reminds them the day before that the meeting's happening, reminds them 3 hours before, an hour before. And then I often make sure that a notification goes out 5 minutes before. And just by doing that, it really optimizes the chances that they're going to get on a call. The other thing I was going to say, this is new, is that because of privacy laws, I think privacy changes, et cetera, on calendars, a lot of times when somebody books time for the first time with you, it shows up in your calendar, but it doesn't show on theirs. So always check your calendar invites to make sure that the person accepted. And if they didn't, now you shoot them a text, maybe you send them an email to say, hey, can you check your inbox and make sure this is accepted for the day?
That's a really good point there on the making sure that someone accepts the actual calendar invite.
I feel like billions of dollars are being lost because of this like issue that's come up in the last few months.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like I said, this is meant to be a little bit of a different sequence than what people are probably familiar with, but just really think through how do you really showcase more of the product? How do you handle some more objections, build more social proof, get someone excited about the meeting and like the value that they're going to get from attending. And I think that can be done through a combination of these emails, of these SMS reminders, and it's breaking away from the traditional, hey, we have a meeting next week. Hey, we have a meeting next week, or hey, we have a meeting in an hour. And it's just, hey, by the way, we have this meeting, but here's also some other really cool things of why you should attend because the company next door is using our product and they love it. I think you're going to love it too, right? Or whatever I'm not this persuasion master like you are, but whatever those themes and those topics are, like find a way to incorporate them in this cadence.
Yeah, and I would even say, depending on how you like to run your meetings, I'm a big fan of sometimes sending things ahead of time of the meeting, like, for example, if it might be a deck or a short video. So that way that person can try and educate themselves on some things that are not necessarily needed. Like they don't need me to present certain information on the call. The whole value of these calls is the discussion. And so you can eliminate like 10 or 15 minutes lost with intros, presenting things that you would normally present, et cetera, and have that person watch or learn that on their own time. And then you get on a call literally just to have a discussion. I think that's the other thing that can really add to the velocity of a deal. So love it. I'm going to stop sharing here and let's come back to the group and see what questions people might have. And again, this is where we want to allow people to ask questions on the topic that we just covered. Or if you have a burning question about an unrelated topic, ask it or submit it anonymously, whatever you want.
I see there's some chatter going on around using Go High Level to build out funnels and automations and do two-way text. Yeah, big fan of Go High Level for those items. I think they've done a really good job of just making automations affordable for most companies.
Yeah.
Because to gain access to HubSpot's automations, you're at a minimum, I think, $800 per month or whatever that may be. So in early stages, a little bit of a challenge there. Later stages, not so much. Nice to have it all in one. But there is something to be said about having access to some of these more advanced capabilities earlier on than having to wait for it later.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love HubSpot, but I've complained about this for a long time that they're not like friendly about that. Yeah. Question for you, Art, is for marketers who are listening, where do you think is the easiest place for them to start just to improve the show up rate?
I think the easiest place is just using something like Count and having in place those automations, the 24 hours, the 1 hour, the 15 minutes, and like getting that kind of in place. And then I think from there, once you have those in, I think that's bare minimum. I think then you start adding on, hey, the case study videos or case study emails or the social proof emails, and start to layer on some of these elements as you go. Like what we showed, we've shown on the screen here, this kind of funnel. I think very few companies can get that spun up like immediately. That is something that needs to be added onto over time. And also, like I said, tested. The 24 hours or 15 minutes may not be best for you. You might better off with 30 minutes or whatever that may be. But I think at base levels, get some reminder automation type flows in place, baked in with some of these social proof case study items, and then work on like your forms and things like that as you get people into this process.
100%. And again, I think a lot of people can start with HubSpot in the free version just to get analytics. But let's just say you have a Calendly. The one thing I do recommend people have is that you want to start tracking attribution from the very beginning. And so put in the form field, if there's one question you should always ask, open text. How did you hear about us? It'll tell you a lot. It'll tell you a lot about where people are finding out about you. And more importantly, like, where should you spend more money? And that could be that you say, hey, like, a lot of these people are coming from XYZ conference. Like, maybe we should have a little bit more activities at that conference next year. Maybe more like more demos, more something, right? Or it could be that, I don't know, people were, hearing about you from a podcast. Even me with my own attribution, I was really surprised earlier in my business how a lot of people found out about me outside of LinkedIn, even though majority of my business is focused on LinkedIn. So that being said, let me see if we have a lot of comments. Let me see if there's any extra questions. So if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself about the topic, or if you have a burning question you want to ask, go for it, or submit anonymously. Feel free. Yeah, the anonymous ones are really good. Yeah, go for it, Emil. What's up, man? That happens on some occasions, and in that case, you have a couple of options, right? One is propose some times. That's number one. You can literally you can write those out, or if you're using Google, I think Outlook has the same thing. Google can connect to your calendar, and you can drop in times that work, right? But in my personal opinion, let's say you're dealing with a really big prospect and you want to make it as easy as possible. You can just ask them like, hey, next week is really flexible with me. You tell me what days and times work and we'll make it work out. And hopefully they give you a few options. In that case, like, you got to make it work. And if it's a big prospect, like, it's highly unlikely that you can't make it work unless you're traveling or something. But that's probably the best way that you can do it. No, all good, man. All good. See you later, Emil. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. See ya. Something else I wanted to bring up, Orit, is that on the form fill, after the submission is done, I do having some kind of video. First of all, do you like having video or written content out for when they submit the form, and why?
I'm a fan of all things video. And the reason why I am is they basically get to pre-meet you ahead of time, get to see your personality before they hop on the call. So like that way the call isn't just like a cold face. Like, it's someone that they've seen before and had a little bit of interaction with. So I'm always a fan of, hey, I'm Oret, just really excited that you booked the meeting. I can't wait to chat with you on X, looking forward to a conversation. And it's basically what we talked about with the LinkedIn voice notes, right? I think that's carried a lot more weight than hitting someone with a thank you page and immediately having them bounce or go read a wall of text. But I think that follow-up video then needs to be short and punchy, like a minute and 30 seconds tops.
Yeah, I agree.
And then go from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better just to have in terms of the follow-up email and content. And I think again, we want to make this as easy as possible, but in the case, let's say you're using HubSpot, I think it's good to have those follow-up documents to be documents on HubSpot. So that way you can see if that prospect is opening that document, and more importantly, what amount of time they're spending. I'm a fan of putting documents that are a little bit longer on HubSpot, so like more than 2 or 3 pages. So at least when we look at a meeting coming up, we're able to see, oh, the prospect opened like this document and they spend a lot more time on these pages, right? So it gives you an idea, is maybe those are the areas that we need to focus on first,
Yeah, I like that insight. If you see someone that's spending a bunch of time on like the integrations section, or maybe they were reading that and then like Googling integrations on the sidebar, like to see how things map. My challenge with that is how many sales people are doing that. I as marketers, I love those kind of analytics. I'm like crazy about it because I'm fascinated. But I'm always curious to know on a sales team how many people are actually going in and looking to see
dude, very few. Yeah, very few. But I think this is where, if you think about the technology adoption curve, you have a technology adoption curve internally in your organization. So I think you want to see who are the top salespeople who are going to do that. And then you really put them in a position to be successful, because then if you have that, you have an early sales adopter internally, and then other salespeople often follow. And if you're lucky, like, you get the leadership to really support that kind of behavior. And then something I was going to mention is that, again, this is getting in the weeds on the meeting, but I think that the best salespeople find ways to make 3 meetings turn into 1 meeting. Okay. And so what often happens is that sometimes you get a meeting with a prospect and they're like, oh, I really want this person to join, that person join, etc. And I think a way to get a glimpse of that is through those documents. Oftentimes people will forward that document, and to get access to it, you have to put in an email. So very easily you can see, oh, this prospect had these two other people open it. I don't know who those people are. If you look them up, you're like, oh, one is a purchasing manager, another one's another surgeon. Then you can follow up with that physician, say, hey, looking forward to our call tomorrow or next week. Notice that so-and-so like also was checking out the document. Should we invite them to the meeting? And if we want, we can just add them to the calendar and invite if they can attend.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Everyone should be asking the question, like, who else is involved in this decision? That way for the next meeting, should they come? But I like that kind of tactic of having the document gated, needs to be shared. That way who's accessing it internally on those companies.
This is this is the time where it's good to have gated content, which is like you email documents, you want it slightly gated just so you have some quality controls to like who's looking at it and everything. Not because you need to be private. Again, those documents, I recommend using things that like if they got out into the public, like it's not a big deal. It's all publicly available information. You just want to know who's looking at it so you have some context and not walking to a meeting blind. Let's see, we're going to give it one more shot. Any other final questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. And for those who are listening live, don't forget that we publish these every following week. We're going to try and publish them a few days after the live, but I need to do some things on the show to do that throughput. But if you missed this live and you want to re-listen to it, share with your team, just go to State of MedTech Pod on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, and just look up for anything that's categorized as marketing. You'll see that episode. Going once, going twice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We're looking forward to next week. If you have questions, hit up or myself, or if you have any burning questions you want a topic for us to cover, just send it to us on LinkedIn and we'll make it a topic. All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always. All righty. Bye, everybody. See ya. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.